Good morning, OB. Happy New Year's. My name is Melly Dabina.
And I'm Johnny Coletti, and I'd like to welcome you guys back from our awesome extended vacation because of the snow.
I know, that's right. I just hope we don't have to pay for it in June. Wait, we don't. We're seniors.
As you guys know, New Year's brings New Year's resolutions, and I'd like to share mine with you. For 2018, I pledged to be happy and spend more time with my family.
Yes, that is definitely achievable. I have a resolution as well. I plan on finishing my OB career strongly and having a good life afterwards in college.
That's very noble of you, Melanie, and knowing your work ethic, I'll know you'll achieve it. On another note, next Monday, January 15th, is MLK Junior Day. At OB, we know that MLK Day is a chance to reflect on his dream of equality. We often do this by analyzing his famous speech, "I Have a Dream," and contemplating whether 50 plus years his dream has become a reality.
Well, Johnny, that's a good question. Personally, I think that we have made progress. We have had African American president, and Martin Luther King Jr. would never have thought of that. Although in today's climate, it does seem as if the nation is moving backwards.
Anyway, this week's episode will pay tribute to the Honorable Dr. King by having OB students recite his famous words to the "I Have a Dream" speech. Interspersed in that segment will also be an Obtv 360 as reported by Rashid Acker.
I'm happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration of freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree is a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice.
It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still badly crippled by the monocles of segregation and the chains of discrimination.
100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land.
So we've come here to dramatize a shameful condition.
In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check.
When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir.
This note was a promise that all men,
yes, black men as well as white men,
would be guaranteed the inalienable rights of life,
liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar
as her citizens of colors are concerned.
Instead of honoring this sacred obligation,
America has given the Negro people a back check, a check which has come back marked
insufficient funds.
But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vault of opportunity of this nation. So we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice.
We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make the real promise of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlight path of racial injustice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood.
Now is the time to make a justice a reality for all of God's children. It will be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until it is the invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro will blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual.
There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright days of justice emerge.
And that is something that I must say to my people who stand on the worn threshold, which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred.
We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline, We must not allow our creative processes to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting the physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to distrust all the white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny.
They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. As we walk, we must walk the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will we be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality.
We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating, "For whites only."
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. On this week's OB360, we are going to be enlightening you on Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. This speech was delivered 55 years ago on August 28th in 1963, at a very turbulent time in this country's past. Civil disobedience was happening across the nation in response to police violence, educational and gender inequality, and racial segregation. Flash forward 55 years and we are now in the 21st century. Let's go to some students get their viewpoints on the current state of race relations in the United States and whether they are getting better or worse. I'm Rashid Acker and I'm here with
Legacy.
Alright, now Legacy, do you think the current state of race relations in the United States are getting better or worse as of late?
I would say worse. I feel like a lot of the racist people are getting more bold as the days go by. Like we just had the KKK resurgence come into Boston, so that was really crazy. And I just think that with Trump being in office, a lot of like racial tensions are heightened. So I would say worse.
Thank you for your answer. And now I'm here with
Fallon Weiss, 7th grade.
Do you think the current state of race relations in the United States are getting better or worse?
I think they're getting worse because people just aren't really like stopping and listening to both of sides of the issue. If we don't stop and listen to each other, it's just going to increasingly get worse and we'll never see both sides of the story.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for your answer. And now I'm here with
McCain.
And now McCain, do you think race relations in the United States are getting better or worse?
Definitely worse. 2017, we saw the events in Charlottesville, and we have a president who won't even condemn racism and the KKK and whatnot. And so I would definitely say race relations have gotten a lot worse.
I agree, McCain. Thank you for your answer. And now I'm here with
Jamalik Bush.
And now, Jamalik, do you think race relations in the United States are getting better or worse?
I don't think they're getting better or worse. I think they're constantly evolving. Like back in the 1950s, we dealt with issues like segregation, and now we deal with issues like police brutality. So I feel like the scope of the race relations have just changed.
All right, thank you for your answer. And now back to the 360. Although this is only a small snapshot, what is evident from these students is that they do believe that relations in the United States are indeed getting worse. Speaking as a representative from Obtv, I have to agree with this sentiment. Some recent anti-immigration policies and ugly racial incidents have happened in places such as Charlottesville and are regarded by many people as an attack on basic human rights. Moreover, this view is shared by many people in America. A recent poll by the PEW Research Center says that 60% of Americans believe that racial relations have gotten worse under the current administration, and just fewer than 10% believe they have gotten better. This is horrifying and unnerving news to many of us at O'Brien, not only because we are a very diverse community, but especially many of us fall into the groups being castigated. Thus, it is just as important today that we hold the words of MLK's speech close to our hearts and strive to change things. As the next generation of leaders, we hold the power to change the dynamics and tone of the harsh rhetoric that is spewed forth daily. We can no longer sit, wait, and hope for things to change. We now have to get up and take things into our own hands. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. That is all for this week's OB360, and now for the rest of the speech.
We cannot be satisfied until the Negroes in Mississippi cannot vote, and the Negroes in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we will be not satisfied, and we are not satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and the righteousness like a mighty stream. I'm not unmindful that some of you have come out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come out from fresh, narrow jail cells. Some of you have come out from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering.
Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redundant. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern city, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair.
I say to you, my friends, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I have a dream. I have a dream that is deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day our nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day in the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of oppression, sweltering with the heat of injustice, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin or by the content of their characters. I have a dream that in a state like Alabama, with its vicious racists and its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. I have a dream that one day little black boys and girls will be able to hold hands join hands with little white girls and boys as sisters and brothers.
I have a dream today. I have a dream that every valley should be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of our Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of a nation into a symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that one day we will be free. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, this of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Lands where my fathers died, land of guilt and pride. From every mountain side, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the Portuguese hilltop of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York.
Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks everyone for reciting the speech, and wonderful job, Rashid, on 360. We'd also like to personally thank Mrs. Shields and Mrs. John Paul for allowing us time in your classes and access to some of your students. Melanie, I'm starting to understand what you mean about feeling like we're going backwards on MLK's dream about treating everyone equally and with respect.
Recently, it seems as if everything that MLK fought, worked, and died for is being pummeled. Every day, the media highlights some new obstacles. that is being erected against people and the principles that MLK represents. In the past year, we have had attacks on the environment, the GLBTQ community, veterans, various minority groups, handicapped individuals, the elderly, women, and the list goes on.
However, King was a strategic, compassionate radical who never lost sight of what he was fighting against. As we pay homage to this great man, this is what we, the next generation, must keep in mind. We cannot and will not be silent. Well, that's all for this week, O'Brien. I'm Johnny Coletzi.
And I'm Melanie Dabina.
We are the best. We are O'Brien. See you next week.